Down, 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 down. Oh, it's back. We're back for Market Madness. That's right, man. The podcast from GiveMeSport, where every day is like deadline day. I'm Joel Beya. Alongside myself is GiveMeSport senior football correspondent, Mr. Ben Jacobs. How you doing, Ben? You okay?
It's good to be back. Yeah, actually got some sleep and a clean shave now the transfer window's shut.
Oh, man, listen, we're going to be discussing your haircuts later on today, but we are joined by esteemed football journalist, Mr. Henry Winter, to discuss Arsenal's title chances. We're going to be talking about the Michael Carrick effect at Manchester United, the crisis off the pitch at Crystal Palace, and on the pitch, gladly, at Tottenham Hotspur after the North London derby demolition. Plus, we're going to hear from YouTuber, influencer, West Ham fan, Behzinga, and ex-Newcastle, Sunderland and Forest midfielder, Mr. Jack Colback. And of course, the transfer window may be shut, but there's still the exclusives that we're going to be talking about. This is Market Madness from GiveMeSport. Let's get into it. Ben, how are you? Talk to us. Tell me about your haircut. You know, what's going on?
Yeah, I was in Italy and I asked for a grade 3 at the back and the sides, but they don't know a grade 3 in Italy. So I got a 3mm instead of the 10mm I was looking for. So basically at the front looks all right, but at the side, ready to do a bit of army service or boot camp. But little birdie tells me you had a haircut as well and you're hiding it behind that cap.
No, I haven't had a haircut. That's the thing. That's why I am wearing the cap.
Oh, I see.
I don't want to scare you guys with what I've got going on over here.
It's like day 1000 of not cutting your hair until Arsenal win the Premier League.
No, it's nothing like that. I would love to cut my hair whenever I can, but it's just been a little bit busy in the last couple of weeks. But usually I just style it out with one of these caps, one of these peacock caps, and then I get moving. But listen, I know that we're here to talk about the football, of course, as much as haircuts are lovely. But before we get cracking, I think there is a need for some breaking news.
Yeah, the window's shut, but Market Madness every day is like deadline day. And I've got a bit of breaking news about Etta, Eyong, the Levante striker. Keep an eye on Premier League and La Liga clubs. There's a really interesting backstory here because a few days ago, Levante played Eyong's former club, Villarreal, and he was benched for that game, even though he's in strong form and is the most valuable player at Levante in terms of finances. So Levante wanted to try and force Etta, Eyong, to CSKA Moscow in Russia because they had an offer of in excess of 30 million euros. But Eyong said no. Levante responded by putting him on the bench and effectively saying, we're going to freeze you out unless you take the move. Eyong was really disappointed and unsettled, but he stuck to his position and now he will wait until the summer for his next move. Barcelona, Deco in particular, have held a meeting with the Eyong camp. And Real Madrid are interested as well. But within the Premier League, you've got Arsenal and Andrea Berta held a meeting last year. Manchester United, Fulham, although their priority is still Ricardo Pepi, and Everton. So at least 4 Premier League clubs interested in Etta Eyong, who is often compared in style to Erling Haaland. But when we interviewed him on GMS, he said he thinks his style is more similar to Harry Kane. So in the summer, Levante may go down because they're second bottom in La Liga and the price could drop. But there is a variable performance-related release clause of between 30 and 40 million euros if teams decide to go in that direction. So Etta Eyong to the Premier League or to another La Liga club, one to watch as we head into the summer window.
Brilliant stuff there. Brilliant stuff there. I have to say, Ben, the work just doesn't stop for you, does it? Inside the transfer window, outside the transfer window, like what is going on?
Well, it's 365 days a year, isn't it? To cultivate relationships. And by the way, with the Eyong interview, you can still watch that on the GMS YouTube or, of course, read it on our website as well. But naturally, when you try and become a newsbreaker, Joel, the gaps in between the windows, even though people think that we just disappear, are arguably more important than in the window itself. Because if that window opens and you're not well placed with your relationships and your sources, then you're going to them when deals are live. And why would they want to talk to a relative stranger or somebody that they don't know or trust? So in these gaps, your agents, your executives, your players, and so on, they're a bit more accessible. And you actually have to put in more work, even though nothing bears a fruit or a story, to make sure that when those windows open, you're actually in a position where you can start getting the information required to break the stories. So it's a different kind of busyness. And yeah, the work never stops.
You know what? That's really good. That I never thought about it that way, but I guess that's the insight we get here on Market Madness with yourself. But just to let you know, Henry Winter is at the front door. But before we let him in, you know, we always like to set you, Ben, a question at the start of the show, just to give you a few minutes to raid through your contact books to find out the answer by the end of the show. Now, today's question is, will Vinicius Jr. leave Real Madrid this summer?
Ooh, good question.
You know, everybody else watching, make sure you stick around. We're going to have the answer by the end of the show. Okay, now a little reminder. For more info on any of the stories discussed today, head over to GiveMeSport's website and make sure you're following us across social, where you can get all the latest news, the questions and comments from the show as well. But next, we're joined by sports writer and author, broadcaster, Mr. Henry Winter, who spoke with Ben just a few minutes ago.
Henry, thanks so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure catching up with you. We're going to touch on a wide variety of topics, but first of all, let's talk about Manchester United. I mentioned that there's likely to be a vacancy there, although, of course, Michael Carrick could end up managing his way into contention to get that job permanently. What are you hearing at the moment regarding either Carrick's chances of keeping that job or some candidates that might prove to be the long-term successor to Ruben Amorim?
What I'm hearing is very consistent with kind of their stance from the start, is that they would make a decision at the end of the season. I think if Michael Carrick finishes in the Champions League positions, which is likely to, because we're expecting 5 positions, and he could push Aston Villa and get into third because he is doing so well. I think when you look, he's not the big name that probably Sir Jim Ratcliffe would want, but I think he's taken all the edge out of it. You don't have these sort of slightly daft press conferences, which you did with Ruben Amorim, where he talked too much and then delivered too little on the pitch. I think the DNA, is important at all clubs, but it's important at Manchester United that you play a certain way. With a Kobbie Mainoo, a kid from the academy in there, who was basically cold-shouldered by Ruben Amorim, with a certain style of play, whether it's with a bit more width, wing backs to Manchester United, I'm sorry, I'm not having it. And then you attack and you see that defiance, Fergie time. You saw that the other day with Šeško's goal. And then you see the man management that Michael's got. You've interviewed Michael Carrick. I spent a year helping him write his book. And there's not much, there's very little ego there, but there's a huge desire to do well and a complete understanding of how young players tick. And he was, we mentioned Capello in South Africa. Michael had a pretty miserable time out there because he didn't feel loved. He wasn't starting. He wasn't really enjoying it. So, yeah, I think that he's the candidate at the moment.
And we know that there'll be a vacancy, Henry, at Tottenham as well. Now they've gone down the route of an interim. And even though there's Roberto De Zerbi, who was a candidate before Thomas Frank came in, is it fair to say if Tottenham can get Mauricio Pochettino, that's probably their plan A?
But yeah, I'm sure it is their plan A, but it's also plan USA. And I think they will, any hints of interest in Mauricio Pochettino, even if it's just a sort of puff of smoke from Tottenham High Road and a letter on a postcard to California, I think that would just cause chaos in America, as we've seen, with coaches who are approached by clubs before. Bobby Robson going into 1990, knowing that he wasn't good, he was at a club at the end of it, he got called a traitor. He would definitely get that in America. You'd have Trump talking about it. So Pochettino, the fans would love Pochettino. I think they've got to sort out a lot of other things first. I think their recruitment, whether it's paying more in wages, and maybe they're going to loosen the purse strings, the Lewis family in the summer, as we're expecting. But it's about characters, it's about leaders. I think if your captain and an outstanding centre half in Christian Romero is serving a 4-game ban, you're thinking, well, hang on a second, where is the real leadership of this club? If you've got a captain who even with legitimate reason, is making criticism or critiques of the club on social media. Where is the leadership in that? So absolutely, you're right. They've got to look at the coach. I mean, you mentioned De Zerbi. I mean, De Zerbi can fall out with people. He can be quite high maintenance. You know, the football maybe finally might have an instant impact, and he's obviously an outstanding coach. But I think that would be a lively one for them to look at. Does he fit into to what they want? But yeah, to be honest, for me, there's no clear candidate at the moment unless they can, you know, somehow get Pochettino for next year, but for next season, without upsetting the Americans, which it would do.
And of course, unlike other vacancies, and even though Tottenham has a lot of appeal, London, great facilities and so on, they're close enough to the bottom three that could impact their search for a new manager as well. Are Tottenham genuinely in any danger of going down?
Yeah, they are. I mean, you know, the table doesn't lie. They need more characters in the team. Look, they were up against a very good Arsenal team the other day, and particularly in the second half. How many Tottenham fans will get into a combined North London 11? I'm not sure many. Igor Tudor's got a good, big job to do. And I admire the way he's being quite sort of outspoken on some of the things that he said. He needs to get players fit. I mean, look, there has to be, looking back, some sympathy for Thomas Frank when you are missing your most creative player, probably your most important player in Kulusevski, when you're missing Porro, Maddison to an extent, all these players, that is, it is disruptive. So that has to be taken into account. But the broader issue there is they have to address the lack of leadership. Igor Tudor, I can remember him scoring a good goal for a header for Croatia against England. He is a leader. He is a short impact man, as we've seen with previous clubs. And look, I hope he does well. Are they in danger of relegation? Absolutely.
And Crystal Palace are sliding in the same direction as Tottenham as well. Another club that feel in a real state of flux. There's a certain irony, isn't there, Henry? Because if you look at January from one perspective, Oliver Glasner confirmed that he was leaving. We knew that Jean-Philippe Mateta wasn't going to sign a new deal and wanted to go. And Mark Gay, of course, also joined Manchester City. So you can paint Crystal Palace as in a state of exodus. And yet at the same time, they broke their club transfer record twice midway through the season, which shows you that they also trying to steady things and spend some money. Where are we at with Crystal Palace? Are they also in a relegation battle? And do you think at the moment, and I know it's changeable, Glasner could stay and go in the summer as originally planned, or might Crystal Palace be forced to also make a mid-season change?
I think anyone who knows Steve Parish, and you do, the very fan-friendly, passionate football man that is Steve Parish, will try and want to hold on to Glasner as long as he can. He had an opportunity when the American co-owners might have been thinking, why is he saying these things about us? This is Glasner saying things about them. Was it Ellen Road? We've got to get rid of him. And Parish was, just calmed the situation down, calmed Glasner down. But look, Glasner has thrown the board under the bus. He's thrown the players under the bus, occasionally. He's thrown the fans under the bus. To say be humble to a group of fans who've travelled to Mostar for an away game with the team not playing particularly well, put in, basically disgracefully, almost a cage in the corner of the ground, and then to have him tell them to be humble when they've made that time of sacrifice, probably with jobs, relationships, money, all those issues that go with being a fan. I just thought it was disrespectful to them, and it was almost like he was trying to talk himself out of the job. The sadness is, and a lot of this is self-inflicted. It's really sad because he's such a good manager, and I think that there will be other clubs, maybe Champions League clubs, who will be looking in the summer, and you just wonder whether they'll actually look at his behaviour and think, how long is he going to stay? Is he being a bit disruptive? But then he is a good manager. He made a system work which Ruben Amorim couldn't work. He's quite an engaging individual. He's absolutely obsessed about football, and he's a winner. He won them 2 trophies. And Palace fans, eventually, they probably won't mourn his immediate departure, but eventually they will say, thanks for those 2 amazing days at Wembley.
In terms of a club that isn't going to change their manager and things are looking a little bit more stable, the league leaders, Arsenal, is this finally their year, or is Pep Guardiola going to do Pep Guardiola things and catch them at the death?
Well, Manchester City have done Manchester City things and done brilliant recruitment in the January transfer window. You mentioned Mark Gay, outstanding centre-back, England's best, steps into the Manchester City defence where they needed strengthening given the injuries and slight loss of form. And then Antoine Semenyo as well. So, you know, we often say there aren't sort of bargains or goodbyes to be had in the January transfer window, where here's two players who've given them impetus, belief, confidence, goals, assists, absolutely outstanding. And you see Haaland, you look at Haaland's form, there's something very ominous about Manchester City at the moment. They've got an outstanding goalkeeper, the winner of the Lev Yashin trophy of the Ballon d'Or in Donnarumma. They've got other players clicking into form. You look at O'Reilly, there's a debate, should he be England's left back? Should he be central midfield? Should he be number 10? You know, and he's playing so well under Pep. And you look at Pep and you look at his hunger, and people talk about, is he going to leave in the summer? I mean, I don't know. I have no inside information, but Guardiola tends to see out contracts. So you think he would do, you know, another year. So look, as you say, Arsenal, stable, defiant, good winners in there. Gabriel and Declan Rice will be in running for the PFA Player of the Year and probably our Footballer of the Year. So I think we've got a proper race on, definitely.
What happens to Mikel Arteta if Arsenal, having led basically all season, don't win the Premier League? I'm not necessarily posing a question around a sacking, but it's more, if Arsenal keep near missing, the factor that's changed is maybe Andrea Berta, who very much demands of his projects a win now philosophy. So even though we've said Arsenal are stable, and even though we don't have a clear indication that they are going to go from first to second, what's your sense if silverware doesn't come this season as to how, even if it's more medium to long term, the hierarchy at Arsenal start viewing either Mikel Arteta or this project?
I think he's got them in contention against an absolute machine in Manchester City. I would be surprised and disappointed if they eased him out. I'm sure there'll be a lot of noise on social media. There'll be a lot of memes from opposing fans about Mikel Arteta, but I think he's got Arsenal in contention. You look at the way they're playing. You look at the new players who are stepping in and stepping up. You look at Gyökeres has improved as the season's gone on. Eberechi Eze, who they spent a lot of money on, took from Palace. Obviously, that was, you know, damaged Palace. But you look at him, and in particular, I wish he could. Probably thinks he could play Tottenham every week. He's got 5 goals against them. He's been outstanding. I think there's a balance there, which Arteta's got to be right. Does he start Odegaard or does he give Eze a run? Gyökeres is looking like he's finding his feet. I think you are seeing definite development, and I know there's a bridesmaids element and the recent second place finishes, but I think if you talk to Arsenal fans, they will look at how, you know, finish top of the league phase in the Champions League. They've got to the League Cup final. They're advancing in the FA Cup. They're top of the Premier League. I mean, I don't think you can say this is a disappointing season because he's put them in contention. Obviously, that is an argument that can be properly had at the end of the season if they end up with nothing. But if you talk to Arsenal fans, there's only one thing that matters, and that is ending the 22 years since the Invincibles. It's all about the title. So if he wins that, then, well, he probably gets a new contract. I think if he pushes City and it's like 1 point between them, can you imagine if it's 1 goal between them after what happened against Liverpool? Then I think for City, then I think it would be hard to get rid of him.
And just a final word to wrap up our own managerial, not quite merry-go-round, but roller coaster. Back to Gareth Southgate. I think we always assume, don't we, that any top manager will be itching to get back into the game. But a bit like Jurgen Klopp, Southgate's been happy to take a step back, think about broader roles, get a book out, consider things outside of the sports sector. And Klopp, of course, even though he's at Red Bull, was at the Winter Olympics ringing the final lap bell for the biathlon. So when do you think the right time is for Gareth Southgate to return to some form of management? Or might there, as he once said on a LinkedIn post, not be a right time? And could there be a conceivable scenario where we never see Gareth Southgate manage again?
I think Gareth Southgate's still got so much to contribute to football. I personally, when he finished with England after the Spain game at Euros, I wanted him to walk straight into the FA boardroom to help run English football, because when the FA come around to choosing Thomas Tuchel's successor, I mean, okay, they've got John McDermott, very highly respected technical director. They've got Dan Ashworth based at St George's Park. They've got good individuals there. But wouldn't it be great if we had at the heart of the Football Association, the oldest football association in the world, someone who'd been involved in the technical development of players in the early 2010s when he was working for the Football Association, who knows the good young players coming through and the pressures on young players as under 21 coach. He'd obviously played 57 times, scored twice for England as a senior international, and then obviously managed England in their most successful period since '66. So, all that knowledge, all that experience, all those connections, I would love to have been just taken into the Football Association. When you see the German FA turn up at Wembley, you can count the number of caps, walking out of a rather nice Mercedes-Benz limo. We need that experience. So I would have liked to have seen him in that role. There's very much, I think, a role for Gareth Southgate in Whitehall, advising Westminster, whether it's the civil servant, whether it's the health department, whether it's the Prime Minister. Not that he's a particularly political person, but he's a very principled person. He's got a lot of ideas. And as you say, his LinkedIn posts, some of the talks that he's given, the TED lectures that he's given about leadership, about the role of modern masculinity. And he's obviously dealt with that as a manager of young men. I think he's just got so much to offer. And also, I don't know, but maybe he's got interest still in managing again. I mean, but you mentioned Jurgen Klopp. I think it's important that occasionally managers, we saw it with Pep when he went off to Manhattan and had that sabbatical. I think the pressure, Ben, and you've seen it close up, you've interviewed these managers, that the pressure that, us in the media, the tensions of the job, even if they do have the sort of, the safety net of nice compensation, there's a lot of pressure on an individual there. And I remember the first thing that Jurgen Klopp said to us when he arrived at Anfield for the first time, and he was shocked when we told him there was no winter break. And he said, I must ring up my wife and cancel my skiing holiday, which I would normally have this year, having been in Germany, where sensible country, they have a winter break. So, yeah, I think it's important that individuals do have a break and that Gareth is enjoying his break. I think he's had that leadership book out. He's spoken at Harvard. He's doing sort of amazing things. But I think maybe there is another chapter in football in some capacity.
Brilliant stuff, Henry. Always enjoy your insight and your fantastic work. Just before you go, where can people find you?
Well, all over social media. I've got a podcast, The Football Boardroom. Christian Purslow, I'm doing it with him, which is actually on Gareth Southgate's platform. It's called 1071, which is his England legacy number. He's never that far away from England, and then writing here, there, and everywhere. And occasionally, when you're not on TalkSport and they can squeeze me in, I'm on TalkSport as well.
It's the other way around. You are certainly the star attraction. And Henry, I always appreciate you joining us, giving us fantastic information and insight. And please do continue to keep up the great work, shining in so many areas, and look forward to seeing you at the World Cup.
Can't wait, Ben.
Henry Winter there, and you are listening to Market Madness on GiveMeSport.
Again, massive shout out to you, Henry. Thank you very much for joining us here at GiveMeSport. Okay, so next to a man who's made nearly 200 top flight appearances and belongs to an elite list of players who represented both Sunderland and bitter rivals Newcastle. Jack Colback, he's been speaking to GiveMeSport's Sam Cohen. Yes, Sam. And they've had the task of naming the top 5 Premier League midfielders. I want to see how Sam did. Let's go take a look.
Roy Keane should be in the top 5. I've got so much respect for him as a player and as a manager. I had him at Ipswich and Sunderland. And I just think he epitomises the type of midfielder you would want in your team. So much fight, leadership, and just an all-round winner. And I think you see that now when he's a pundit, you see how wound up he gets. Because I think even now players don't give what he gave in terms of effort and commitment. So I wanted to have him in there. I put Fabregas alongside because you could not read what he was going to do. You'd think you had a chance to maybe press him and have a sniff at getting the ball, but he was 2 steps ahead, and he was so good. Number 4, I had Lampard. His goal-scoring record speaks for itself. I think one season he scored 22 maybe from midfield, which is just extraordinary numbers, really. I think you'd struggle to see some strikers get to that number now. Number 3, I would have De Bruyne. Technically, for me, the best that's played in the Premier League in the midfield.
Big statement.
You've got to factor in everything. You've got to factor in trophies and all of that, which obviously De Bruyne won a fair few, but I think in terms of ability and the things he can do with the football and the way he can cross the ball and that whipped one, which stays low, there's very few can do that. His vision, his dribbling ability. So, yeah, for me, technically the best midfielder we've had in the Premier League. And 1 and 2, so initially I had Scholes number 1 and Gerrard number 2. I think Scholes won something like 25 major trophies, which is ridiculous. Was it Xavi or maybe Iniesta came out and said how good he was? And I think if you get praise off them two, then, you know, it speaks for itself. But I then changed it around and I thought, if I wanted one player, one midfield player in my team for one game, who would that be? And that would be Gerrard. His leadership. He won games for Liverpool on his own, really. And just his technical ability, his range of passing, the goals he scored, the important goals he scored. Yeah, for that reason, I would have him as number 1.
Man, what a very interesting listing.
Some would say controversial.
Very controversial. Like, it sounded like he thought Kevin De Bruyne was the best, but yet he still picked 2 others ahead of him.
Yeah, and Gerrard over Scholes for number 1 as well. Let me ask you a question, because it's difficult, right? We're dealing with some incredible historical names in the centre of the park. Gerrard, Lampard, De Bruyne was obviously mentioned, and Scholes. Is Declan Rice in a top 5 for you? But we're talking all time, not now. And take off that Arsenal biased hat.
Well, this one. It's a tough one because I think he's probably 5th. What will improve his status amongst that list is when he wins Premier League titles, because you can't. I mean, then I'm controversial because Gerrard's actually my number 1. So it's really hard to say.
Yeah, and also I think that there's more than one current Premier League midfielder that is above Declan Rice. So if you remove the history, for me, I would say Rodri, Ballon d'Or winner, but also above Declan Rice. I know they're different kind of players. Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, no, I think Bruno is tops. And I think for many years, I didn't actually appreciate how good Bruno Fernandes was. I was looking at him more as a Manchester United player in their current situation. But, you know, to me, I don't understand why Frank Lampard's never considered as the number 1 midfielder. He's got the most goals in Premier League history from a midfield position.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And I think that the older generation of Premier League midfielders had insane stats, particularly hard with goal contributions, but leadership as well, which is never always factored into these debates too. Passing, speed, he had absolutely everything. So yeah, Lampard would absolutely make my top 5. And I'm sure if Liv was here, it would make her top 1.
I'm very, very sure. But anyway, listen, I think we have some more breaking news coming in right now.
Yeah, this is a really interesting bit of breaking news, and it relates to Morgan Rogers. If you are not signed up to the GMS newsletter, do it now, because regularly we give you these bits of insight even before they hit our website or the wider media. Morgan Rogers signed a new deal at Aston Villa last year, And even though it seems like it's long and, of course, rewards him and extends his terms until 2031, it was actually only a 1-year extension because the old contract was until 2030. And what I'm told from sources close to the player and within Aston Villa is a summer departure for Morgan Rogers, even with that new deal, is not discounted. Now, suitors who looked before he signed that contract extension in November over the summer were under the impression that Morgan Rogers would be available for around £80 million. Now there's a few variables, of course, 1 year extra on the contract, but clubs will be in the same position as they were last summer when we get to this current summer, even with that new deal. Whether Villa do or don't get Champions League football is going to be important as well. But Villa may still need a big outgoing to get them over the line with this last year of PSR. And even under squad cost ratio, if they get European football, they'll have to abide by financial fair play. So it's not going to be easy for Aston Villa. And as a consequence, a Morgan Rogers departure, even with the new deal, is not to be fully ruled out. I am told that Chelsea and Liverpool are two concrete suitors from within the Premier League. Aston Villa at the moment may point to a British transfer record or certainly a fee well in excess of £100 million. But as I said a moment ago, suitors felt last summer that the number for Morgan Rogers might be closer to £80 million. And if that holds good heading into this summer, it's fantastic value. Of course, Villa, in a perfect world, would love to say not for sale, but still we need to keep an eye on the future of Morgan Rogers and potentially a move within the Premier League, even though he only signed a contract extension last November.
You know, that's really interesting to me that he's linked with Liverpool because they've just signed Wirtz. Why would you you're going to have players who want to be receiving the ball, occupying the same space. I don't get that. Does that make sense to you?
I mean, it does, but obviously Morgan Rogers can go wide as well, and Florian Wirtz is quite versatile too. What you say is accurate in the sense that Liverpool are relatively well stocked in the centre. All of that said, the plan when Diogo Jota was, of course, still at the football club, and our thoughts are still with his family and his friends, and it's a tragedy, and it would be insensitive to be thinking even now about replacing Diogo Jota because he'll be forever in everybody's memory. But the point is, when they were heading into the season, Florian Wirtz was a target and Diogo Jota was still there, and Luis Diaz was still there prior to his move to Bayern Munich as well. And Liverpool also have to think in the long run about replacing Mo Salah as well. So you could argue, even with Florian Wirtz, there's room for one more, especially if that player can get wide right and central or wide left and central, coupled with the fact that Alexander Isak is injured at the moment and has not got going yet for Liverpool. So another source of creativity, but as importantly, somebody that can sort of fulfill that, I would call it Bobby Firmino role. Because if you look at classic historical Liverpool, when it was Firmino, Mane and Salah, Salah got a lot of headlines and goals. Mane did a lot of damage. But if you look at a lot of the key moments and goals, it was always Firmino not only contributing, but being unselfish and kind of acting as the chemistry or the glue that holds the team together. Now, Wirtz was signed for that purpose, but Morgan Rogers would be another versatile option that could fulfill that need as well. So Liverpool and Morgan Rogers may be one to watch, and Chelsea are also looking for another creative-minded player. And your point stands for Chelsea, by the way, as well, because Esteval wants to play as a 10, Cole Palmer is a 10 as well, but once again, a player like Morgan Rogers can play in more than one position.
Oh man, I wonder if we'll be getting the best of Morgan Rogers if he goes and plays elsewhere. That's all I'm saying, really. But no, I do hear your point. Up until last weekend's draw with Bournemouth, only Chelsea and Man United had taken more Premier League points than West Ham over the previous 5 games. Even though this result made it 6 matches unbeaten, they're still third from bottom. But in this recent upturn, is that enough to convince influencer and co-founder of the Sidemen, Behzinga, that his beloved Hammers can stay up? He's been speaking with Sam.
I'm in a tricky predicament with my football club at the minute because across the last 6 games, there has been a bundle of positive signs. but also the smallest errors will end up being massive consequences at the end of the season. Being 2-0 up at Chelsea, and I think we could have been 3 or 4 up before it just all went crumbling down. That's a missed 3 points. The game against United feels like a lost 3 points. And at the minute with Forest, I think Leeds are safe. I think with Forest and Spurs above us, you've got to sit there and think, are those things going to cost us at the end of the season?
How crazy is it, by the way, just before we carry on with West Ham, how mental it is that Tottenham are even in this discussion to potentially be relegated from the Premier League?
I feel like you could say the same for us. We won a European trophy a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, how is this even happening? Spurs won the Europa League last year. Like, it's 2 clubs that have just done like ridiculous runs in Europe and are now in the conversation for relegation. The Premier League never stops.
It's true. The Premier League does never stop. So whilst we're on the topic of West Ham, what do you feel like they need right now to stay up? What's going to be that difference? Obviously, the January transfer window did see a few incomings.
Yeah.
Obviously, that window is now closed. What is going to keep West Ham up?
I'm quite happy that we got a centre-back in Disasi, and I'm hoping he's looked really solid in his first couple of games. So I think, considering he hasn't played a lot of football, he's looking quite good. So I think a centre-back was definitely needed. And I think just a bit of dog fight in some of the players. Like Thomas Souček lives and dies on the sword, man. What a player he is. But more people like that. You need a core group that can sort of like get that around the change rooms. Like, you're either going to stay in the Premier League or not. Butt your ideas up.
It's true, because with this close to the run-in, there is really no time for mistakes. So let's zoom out a little bit and go to the top end of the Premier League. How do you see this title race playing out? Do you think it's done where we are at the moment, or could there still be a little bit of a twist?
If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said that this is wrapped up and this is Arsenal's.
Yeah.
If you'd have asked me 2 weeks ago, I just think Semenyo is a ridiculous player. His goals and assists already for City are proving incredible. Haaland, we know what he is. I know he's had a couple of blanks recently, which has hurt my FPL. But he's had a couple of blanks. But their team is just ridiculous, and I feel like it's very cliche to say, but that run in towards the end of the season, they always seem to pick up points. And Arsenal drawing with Brentford last night isn't ideal for them. So, and I think because City have done it before, and Arsenal haven't in recent times, it might play more into City's hands. But either way, I'll be keeping my eyes on it.
For sure. That actually brings me on to my next question, because you said obviously City have done it before. Arsenal haven't done it in quite a fair while. When it comes to a run-in like this, what do you think is more important, form or that experience, like you mentioned?
I think, but I'm gonna fence it here. I think both have a part to play, because you need the good form to look around the dressing room and be like, come on lads, we're firing at the minute. But then also that sort of experience of going to grounds that you might know are tricky, where you might slip up, you might get a draw. I feel like City have had that numerous occasions now. They've done 4 in a row. So like, I think they've got the ability to look at certain games in the calendar and be like, this is where we can't afford to slip up. Whereas people that haven't done it in recent times might slip up on ones like Brentford.
Yeah, it's an interesting point for sure. Here's one. If Arsenal fail to win the league and fail to win any cup this season, should that be the end of Mikel Arteta at Arsenal?
Oh, that's so hard, because I didn't want to get rid of David Moyes, so I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because David Moyes, I know he got us a trophy and the football turned a little bit bad, and then like you could say with Arteta, oh, but we've only won an FA Cup. He's bottled it every other time, but you think about the team he was and he did have at the start of his tenure. It is a ridiculous team. It's quite a boring team, I'll say that. It is really boring, but it gets results. So, and that's what you want from a football club, really, is results, don't you?
And you can see that whole interview with Behzinga on the GiveMeSport YouTube channel. Okay, cool. So before we go, you may remember earlier on in the show, we asked Ben the question that he usually answers at the end of the show, which is today, will Vinicius Jr. leave Real Madrid this summer? Ben, have you found that answer for us, yes or no?
Yeah, well, I think Saudi Arabia are going to try for Vinicius Jr., and that will be the case if the window opens and Vini Jr. hasn't signed a new deal. The backstory here is that Real Madrid have been trying for quite some time to get Vini Jr. to extend because he's heading towards the final year of his current deal. And when Xabi Alonso was manager, the Vini Jr. camp said, we are putting negotiations on hold. Now Xabi Alonso has left and Vini Jr. and Alonso didn't always see eye to eye. Real are still trying. And if we take Vini Jr. at his public word, then he wants to stay at Real Madrid. So a contract extension clearly can't be ruled out. But until he puts pen to paper, Saudi want to try for Vini Jr. and they are prepared to pay Real Madrid over 200 million euros, and it was higher last summer. And Vini Jr. has already been informed verbally with a non-binding offer that across 5 years, he could earn 1 billion euros. That's about 200 million salary per season, which is roughly equivalent to what Cristiano Ronaldo earns. If it's to be Saudi, I'm told Al Ahly are likely to be the club of choice. But let's see whether that changes after the Cristiano Ronaldo strike for a couple of games as he wants more money and investment for Al Nassr. It's unlikely to be Al Hilal, who have just signed Karim Benzema. And of course, now Al Ittihad need to be busy because they lost Benzema and also N'Golo Kante as well to Fenerbahce. So they've got some work to do in the market. But within Saudi, for the last 6 months or so, sources have told me that Al Hilal got Neymar as well, even though he got injured. Benzema originally went to Al Ittihad. And of course, Cristiano Ronaldo to Al Nassr. And although Ivan Toney is in red hot form and Riyad Mahrez is a big name, the feeling within the Saudi Pro League is that with respect to those players, Al Ahly haven't yet had a marquee name equivalent to the others that I've just mentioned. So Vinicius Jr. and Al Ahly might become a plot line, but between now and the World Cup, Real Madrid are hoping to clarify Vinicius Jr.'s future now that Alonso has gone and get him to sign a new deal. But if he is to depart and become available on the market, then Saudi are definitely intent to try. And as we've spoken about on previous shows, this is going to be a really significant summer for all Saudi clubs because it's phase 2 of the project. It's 3 years after 2023. Many of the older names and all of the signings generally are at the end of the 3-year contracts that were offered to them. And it's after the World Cup, which means more peak age players might be prepared to go to Saudi Arabia comparative to January and last summer. So Vinicius Jr. and Real Madrid are still in talks, but Saudi are definitely intent on trying to get what would be a major coup if those contract talks between Vinicius Jr. and Real Madrid don't develop.
Let's be honest, Ben. What are you doing if you're Vinny?
I think he can have Saudi in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years. So staying at Real Madrid seems more logical to me because the money will still be there 2027, 2028, and so on. So it wouldn't at all surprise me now if Xabi Alonso is not a roadblock in Vinicius Jr. putting pen to paper if there is an extension at Real Madrid. But as I say, Saudi are quite prepared to keep throwing bucket loads of money at Vinicius Jr. to try and get what would be a major signing for the Saudi Pro League.
You know what? I think you're right, to be honest with you. It will always be there. It's a bit like the Mo Salah situation. Doesn't matter if he goes this year, next year, it will always be there. But I just want to say that that's it for this week's Market Madness. We will be back in a couple of weeks' time. But until then, you can listen back on the podcast app of your choice. Just search for Market Madness. For more info on any of the stories we've discussed and much more, please head over to GiveMeSport.com. And Ben, I want to say this is actually my last episode on GiveMeSport. So I want to give a massive shout out to yourself, Liv, and the whole team. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you guys. And also to the GiveMeSport audience. Sometimes we don't get the chance to correspond and talk, but I just want to say you guys have been brilliant. And this Market Madness show will continue to go on and do great things, man. So thank you very much.
And I just want to say as well, what an absolute legend you are, Joel Beya, as a friend and as a broadcaster. Absolute top man and brilliant guy. And, you've just said it's your last show. So, of course, naturally, we all have to wish you the best, but I'm certainly hoping that it won't be and that we will see you again during the madness of the transfer window. So never say never. It's certainly not goodbye, but you're a brilliant guy. You're a fantastic broadcaster, and we've loved having you presenting here on Market Madness, my friend.
No, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to, like, you know, some of the interviews we got coming up, like the Jesse March interview. That's going to be great. You know, you spoke with him, the Canadian boss. Like, you guys, you're doing amazing things. So everybody watching, please make sure you stay tuned. There's more to come. Joel Beya signing out. Peace.
Who cares? Like, it's the World Cup. Like, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure we're ready to go, and we'll be excited for whoever we have to play. It's still an incredible opportunity for a nation like Canada, and where we are in the overall development of the sport in the country. You know, it made me think more carefully about what that would look like. With a home World Cup right around the corner, everyone knows how important this moment in time is, and so I get the best versions of our players almost every single time. That's the gold standard of being a striker, and he has that.